Greetings, it is I, Tantus Narvan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on the 4th edition of Shadowrun. Last time we started talking about magic and the awakened world, and we're going to continue talking about that. There's a lot more information to cover. We're going to move into talking about magical lodges. Now, magical lodge is a collection of information supplies to assist a magician on their magical endeavors, and magicians of the same tradition can share a lodge. It's required to improve a skill linked to the magic attribute, to cast a ritual spell, or to learn a new spell. Now, a magical lodge has a force rating, and that force rating is important because the force rating tells you the maximum rating at which you can increase a magical link skill to. So effectively, if your force is 4, I can raise my magical link skill to 4, and also it tells you the maximum force of any ritual spells cast in that lodge can be. Now, it costs you 500 nuyen per rank and force that the lodge would be in order to buy the materials for it. And it requires an activation ritual in order to make the materials that you've assembled into an actual lodge. Now, any number of magicians can be involved in this, but you need at least one. It takes you 1 day per point of force that the lodge was going to have in order to activate. So if it's a force 4 lodge, you need to spend 4 days. Now, later on, you can spend money to improve it. You can spend and buy more materials, since materials are the basic ability of it. Now, a lodge also acts as an astral barrier. I'll talk about those a little later, but consider this, that anybody that was involved in the activation of the lodge can ignore the astral barrier and can choose to let other astral forms into it. Effectively, they can choose who comes and goes out of the lodge. Astrally, of course. Now, the lodge has the signature of any magicians that were involved in the activation of it. So if you're using magical tracking based upon a magician's signature, the lodge is going to be intrinsically linked to that magician. Now, should I want to increase the force of my lodge, I would have to not only spend that money, but I would have to redo the activation ritual, but only the number of days in difference to what I had. So if I was changing the force of my lodge from 3 to 4, I would have to spend 500 nuyen, the difference in price that I didn't spend originally, and I'd have to spend 1 extra day, the difference in days that I did not spend originally activating the lodge. Now, the contents of the lodge are very often going to reflect the personality of those that stocked it and the tradition you're in. Certain traditions will have certain materials that other ones will probably not have that are linked to the intrinsic way that they think about magic. A lodge is portable. In a way, the materials within the lodge can be moved. The magic of the actual lodge, the astral point of the lodge, is not portable. So you can move everything that you used in order to create the lodge in the first place away from there, but the point in time that you created the lodge at, the place that is the lodge on the astral plane, is not portable and is stuck there. Though, since you still have the materials you've already purchased, when you move them to another location, you can then once again use a ritual to activate it again in another spot. You've already purchased the materials. That was what that 500 nuyen per force was. The activation ritual is something separately, so you can activate it somewhere else and change where your lodge is. It just requires you to reactivate it. So it is not portable, but the materials within are. Now, moving on from that, magic in general, it has very little chances of you perceiving it. It's not very perceptible. When you cast spells, do things like that, it doesn't show stuff to you. There are some exceptions. For example, shamans have something called a Shamanic Mask, where when they cast spells, things like the effects of spirits and magic come over their face, like they get animalistic aspects. A mask. This is something that's noticeable. Traditionally, though, if you don't have anything like that, in order for you as a person to perceive someone casting a spell, it is a perception check with a threshold of 6, minus the force of whatever magic effect you're trying to witness is. The more powerful the spell, the more noticeable it is. Now, there are modifiers to this, including a Shamanic Mask that would give you bonus dice. Just look in the book to see if you would apply to any of those. Now, magical actions. There are, of course, free actions, simple actions, and complex actions you can take as a magician. There's an entire list of them. For example, I will give just a few examples, but I won't go over all of them. I will be talking about a good chunk of them, and hence why I'm giving you those examples. For centering, which I will talk about later, it's a free action. You can just center on your turn. Simple actions would be to summon and command a spirit. So this is assuming I already have the spirit, I already have its services secured, whether it's bound or for the day. In order to call it back or to command it, both are simple actions. A complex action would be casting a spell or summoning the spirit in the first place. Now, moving on from the types of actions, because most of those I will talk about when I'm talking about separate sections. Now, the book gives two examples of traditions, the Shamanic tradition and the Hermetic tradition. I'll talk about those a little later, but you could also make up your own tradition, or there are other books that have other traditions listed in them that you could look into. Now, if you're making up your own, there are certain things you have to think about, because these are important things for any tradition, even ones that are made. First, you need some kind of concept. This is a concept of what your tradition believes the way that magic works. That's the first thing. How does magic work? Why does it work? What does it all mean to me? Second, you have to choose what kind of spirits it can summon. A tradition doesn't summon every type of spirit. There's a limited number of spirits they can summon. Each of the spirits they can summon is associated with a type of magic. Each of the types of spells that are able to be cast. So that's the limit on the number of spirits that your tradition is going to be summoning, really. So you're choosing the type of spirit, and then the type of spell casting it's associated with. It's very important, too, because any of these spirits that you summon are going to be using favors related to that. So if a water spirit is based around my more attack abilities, then I'm going to be summoning a water spirit to attack someone. While their hand, if fire is more for kind of more protection type spells, then that's why you're summoning a fire to do protection type abilities. They're going to relate to the types. The category of spell that they are linked to is the type of favors they're going to have for you. So that's very important, these two things, when developing a tradition or understanding what it means in a tradition. We'll talk about this when you want to look at the entry of the tradition. So talking about this helps you understand what tradition means. The final thing is, what mental attribute is linked to drain for me? How do I resist drain other than just willpower? It will list that in the book. It will say, this is what you use to resist drain. This is, that is. And that's a very important factor too, because then I'm knowing how I'm resisting the drain I'm going to be getting from casting my spells or summoning my spirits. And the thing is, that attribute's the same for all members of your tradition. Once it's chosen, it cannot be changed. So that's a big final decision for your tradition. And that will be 5 types of spirits. I forgot to mention that it is 5 types of spirits to the 5 categories of magic. Sorry about that. Let's just briefly talk about the 2 examples that are in the book. There's the Hermetic tradition, which is based more around the science of magic, of studying and learning it, and treating it more like a science. On the other hand, there's the Shamanic tradition, which is based among the connection of magic to nature, and that it is a part of nature and in essence flowing through the world. Both these traditions are very different, but each have their unique abilities, and I'm not going to go into all the details about them. You can check them out yourself. If you want to look into a lot more traditions, I would recommend the Street Magic book. Street Magic has a listing of a whole bunch of other traditions that you can choose from that are not as popular or as wide known as these 2 here, because these are the 2 most widely used traditions out there, but they are still out there, and it might be appropriate for your character to choose one of them. Or you could talk with your GM and develop one yourself, of course. So that's it for today. I talked about magical lodges. I talked about noticing when someone else is casting a spell. I talked about the basic actions of spellcasting just a little bit. And I more importantly talked about the tradition you're going to choose, because that's a very important choice for your character, what your concept of spellcasting really is. In the next time, we're moving into talking about spellcasting, sorcery, and the spells you cast. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Show support for the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. And of course, until the next time, I bid you farewell.